Kesubos, Pesach.
Okay. Uh, a woman who was widowed or divorced, excuse me, a woman who was widowed, divorced, and says, "You have married me as a virgin." And he says, "Not so, but I married you as a widow." If there are witnesses that she went out with a veil and with her hair untied, her ketubah is 200 zuz. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says the distribution of parched grain is also proof. And Yeshua admits that if one says to another, "This field was your father's, and I bought it from him," and that he is believed, for the one who that created the viability is the one that undid it. If, however, there are witnesses that it was his father's, and he said, "I bought it from him," he is not believed. If witnesses said, "This is our handwriting, but we were coerced, we were minors, or we were unfit for testimony," they are believed. If, however, there are witnesses that it is their handwriting, or if their handwriting is verified from another source, they are not believed.
All right, so now your two witnesses are called into court because there's a claim going on based on a document that their signatures are on. Zeomer, so the one witness says, "Yep, that's my signature on the document." V'zeh kasav yado shel chaveri, and I recognize my friend's handwriting over there. V'zeh omer zeh ksav yadi v'zeh ksav yado shel chaveri, and the other one comes and says the same thing. That's my signature, and I recognize my friend's signature. Hare elu neimanim. Of course, these are believed because you got two witnesses who are saying this about the signatures. So nobody was seriously thinking of disputing that. But why we mention this is because what happens if you have the case? Everyone looks at the thing and says, "Look, I sign a lot of documents in my life. I'm a regular witness on these things. People always want me to sign on documents. I don't remember what I signed on, but I do recognize that that's my signature. So yeah, that's my signature." And both of them say this individually, but they don't say anything about their friend's signature because what do they know about the other guy's signature? Tzrichim letzaref imahim acher, divrei Rebbe. So Rebbe says, well, that's not good enough because we need to have witnesses testifying about each signature, that each signature is valid, and you've only got one witness on each signature. So now you need somebody else to verify that each signature is good. This is Rebbe. Chachamim omrim, why would you need such a thing? The document itself is the edus. Einan tzrichim letzaref imahim acher. Your document is what we're arguing about. We're not trying to find witnesses on the signatures. We're trying to the witnesses are on the document. All you want to establish is that that's a real signature, and the person is believed for that to say that this is their own signature, and this is the halacha that the document itself is the two witnesses, and that's what we're trying to prove. You don't need to have witnesses on the witnesses. Okay. Now, returning to the subject of Pesha Asa or Pesha Hitter. When you say something that's a concession, and in the same breath you say something that's a kula, so you're believed to say Isha Shemra Eshes Ish Hayisi Ugrusha Ani. So there's a new woman in town, and or let's say that she's been living all around, but she conducted a secret marriage. She says, "Look, I conducted a secret marriage because reasons, but it didn't last for long, and he divorced me." Nemenis, we believe her. Why? Because if she wanted to, she could have just kept Strum herself.
Wow.
Right? If she wanted to lie, it would have been a much better lie to say, I've never been married," because then she's allowed to marry a Kohen. Okay, but Apesha Asa, Apesha Hitter. So, okay, we believe that she's not Ashes Ish and we'll allow her to remarry. No problem. However, if people know that she was married, V'hi omeres grushani, and she now comes and says, "No, I've been divorced." Well, so bring a get, or bring witnesses that you had a get. But once everyone already knows that she's married, that's a chazaka. She doesn't have a pesha asa, therefore she doesn't have a pesha hitir. Okay, enonemenes. Amra nishbasi. If she says, "I was kidnapped," utzohorani, but I was not molested, um, right? Which again permits her to marry a kohen. So we didn't know that she was kidnapped, and we didn't know that she was that she was that if anything happened to her, so she could have just kept quiet. And okay, once again, she introduced the Isser, and she's introducing the Heter, and we believe her on both counts. But if people know that she was kidnapped, and she comes and says, "No, I wasn't. They didn't touch me." Sorry, we cannot believe her. the presumption of non-Jewish captors is that they abuse their captives. ואם מי שניסס באו העדים, הרי זאת תצא. And if she and if she got הרי זו לא תצא. However, if she got the heter to remarry, and if she got the heter to marry a Kohen, we're saying here, and she married the Kohen on the basis of this, and then after she marries the Kohen, other witnesses come and say, "Oh, but we saw her being kidnapped. It's too late now. We already gave her a heter to marry, and therefore she doesn't have to get divorced." So because in this case we don't suddenly say, "Oh, the reason why she's not." Why she wouldn't be allowed to marry the Kohen is because of a presumption. It's just a presumption that she was abused by the captors. But once she's already married, we're not going to make her get divorced from the Kohen on the presumption that she was
Okay.
abused. We believed her at the time. We continue believing her. Actually, the Gemara tells an interesting story inside this. I remember learning the Gemara on this Mishnah. There was a case of some Jewish women who were captured, and they said they told their captors, "Listen, please, we'll go and negotiate our release." They left a man from their group. I think I can't remember how they did it. Take this with a pinch of salt. I may get some facts wrong in the story here, but basically, nobody had known that they were captured. So they said, can we go and negotiate our own release?" And I think that they must have left some sort of collateral behind a person or something to guarantee that they would be released, that they would come back. And they said, so they went straight to the Beis Din, and they said, "We are captives and we haven't been abused," for exactly this reason, because nobody knew that they'd been captured yet. They came and said, "We captured and we haven't been abused." So that and the Beis Din said, "Okay, let's organize a ransom for you, and also your mutar to marry Kohanim." Smart
That's
girls. Okay. Anyway, shtei nashim shenishbu. Okay, so now there you've got two women who um oh, by the way, so before we go into this onto this mission, it's also an important contrast um, that we bring between this case over here and the case where we said a man was dead. We permitted him, the husband was dead, and we permitted her to remarry, and then two witnesses came and said, "No, but he's alive." And now we do force her to divorce. And the reason is because they're doraisa. They're coming and establishing a fact doraisa that she is an Ashes Ish and she must leave this second man. Okay, but in this case, it's a derabanan, and that we have this presumption of abuse, and since and it's not actually an aidus on her abuse, it's just an aidus on the fact that she was captured. Okay, back to Vav. Shtei nashim shenishbu. So two women were captured. Zos ameres nishbeisi utahora ani. V'zos ameres nishbeisi utahora ani. Okay. Each one of them comes out of captivity and says, "Look, I was captured, but they didn't abuse me." Ein hanemanas. This is in a case where they were known to have been captured. So all they've got is a per shehitir and no per she'asar. So therefore, they're not believed. And and then, however, ubizman shehayu shehen me'idos zo et zo. If each one says, "Look, I know that my friend was not abused," and the other one says back on her, "I know my friend was not abused." Hare elu nemanos. We believe them on each other, even though they may be doing it as like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing. They're not believed on themselves because, of course, they're nogea b'davar. But when they're testifying about somebody else, we accept even one witness to say that nothing went wrong over here again, because this is not a din d'oraisa we're trying to undo. It's a din d'rabbanan that there's a presumption that captors abuse their captives, and if you just have one witness, even a woman witness coming to come and say that she's okay, we accept her edus.
okay.
Okay, Yvamos.
Okay. Vamos. We are at Tesvav Zion.
Yeah.
If he said, "My husband died and then my father-in-law died," she may remarry and collect the ketubah, but her mother-in-law is forbidden. If she was Yisrael's daughter married to a Kohen, she might eat truma. These are the words of Reb Tarfon. Reb Kiva says this is not the way to deliver her from sin. Rather, let her be forbidden from remarrying and forbidden from eating truma. If someone betrothed of one of five women, but he did not know which one he betrothed, and each one of them says, I am the one he betrothed, he should give a bill of divorce to each one, leave the ketubah payment between them, and withdraw. These are the words of Reb Tarfon. And Bekiva says this is not the way to deliver him from sin. Rather, let him give a bill of divorce and the ketubah to each one. If someone stole from one of the five people, but did not know which one he sold from, um, and each one says he stole from me, he should leave the stolen amount between them and withdraw. These are the words of Reb Tarfon. And Akiva says this is not the way to deliver him from sin, rather let him pay the total stolen amount to each one. If a woman went overseas with her husband and son, and then she came and said, my husband died and then my son died, she is believed. If she said, my son died and then my husband died, she is not believed. However, we consider it a statement, and we must therefore perform kalitza but not ibum. If a woman said, I was granted a son overseas, and she added, my son died and then my husband died, she is believed. If she said, my husband died and then my son died, she is not believed. However, we consider her statement, and she must therefore perform kalitza but not yibum. Okay.
Dalad Dalad.
Vamos, dalad. If he married her, she is considered his wife in every respect, except that her ketubah obligation rests upon the estate of her first husband. The commandment is for the eldest to perform yibum, but if he was unwilling to do so, he may approach all the other brothers. If they were willing to return to the eldest and say to him, the mitzvah is incumbent upon you, perform either kalitza or yibum. If he deferred to a minor until he becomes of age, to the oldest until he arrives from overseas, or to a deaf mute or to an idiot, we do not listen to him, but we say to him, this mitzvah is incumbent upon you, perform either kalitza or yibum.
Yeah, that's it. Sukkah.
Okay. Aleph base. If one builds a sukkah under a tree, it is right into his house. If the sukkah is built on top of another sukkah, the upper one is valid and the lower one is invalid. Rabbi Yehuda says that there can be no tenancy in the upper one, only the lower one is valid. If one spread a sheet over the skak because of the sun, or beneath it because of the falling leaves, or if one spread it over the four-poster bed, it's invalid. However, one may spread it over a two-poster bed. If one raised onto it a grapevine or a gourd or an ivy and covered it with skak, it is invalid. But if the skak exceeded them, or if he detached them, it is valid. This is the rule regarding the validity of skak. Whatever is susceptible to contamination or does not grow from the ground, we may not use it for skak. But whatever is not susceptible for contamination and grows from the ground, we may use it for skak.
Okay.
Trumos. Okay. Daled Yud Gimel. Rabbi Yossi said a case came once before Rabbi Akiva concerning 50 bundles of vegetables, into which a kindred one had fallen, half of which was truma, and I said in his presence, it is annulled, and not because of truma is annulled in 51, but because there were 102 halves. If a saw of unclean, I'm sorry, this wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I was right. All right. If a saw of unclean truma fell into less than 100 of kulan, and into Maisa Rishon or into Maisa Sheni or as halal produce, whether unclean or clean, they must be left to rot. If that saw was clean, it must be sold to priests at the price of truma, including the value of the saw. If it fell into Maisa Rishon, he must designate it as truma Maisa. If it fell into Maisa Sheni or halal produce, it must be redeemed. And if that kulan was unclean, it may be eaten in small cakes or roasted or kneaded with fruit juice or divided among pieces of dough, so that in no single place should there be an egg's bulk. If a saw of unclean truma fell into 100 of clean kulan, Reb Eliezer says truma must be taken and burnt. For I say that saw fell in, it is the saw which came up. But the comment said it is nullified and should be eaten in small cakes, or roasted, or kneaded with fruit juice, or divided among pieces of dough, so that in no single place should there be an egg's bulk.
Okay. Ohalos.
What else? Okay. Vav hey. There is tumor between the joints, and underneath it is right. If the tumor
Yep.
between the joints and underneath it is a very thin covering. If there is a handbreadth of empty space, everything becomes tamei. If there is no handbreadth of empty space, the tumor is considered occluded. If the tumor is noticeable within the lowest story becomes tummy whether or not there is a cubed handbreadth of empty space. A wall that resulted from excavation is ruled as a garlic peel. How so? There is a wall between two recesses or between two underground chambers. If tumor is in the open areas of the catacomb and there are utensils in the wall that are covered very thinly, utensils remain tahor. If tumor is in the wall covered very thinly and in the open areas there are utensils, utensils remain tahor. The tumor is underneath a pillar, tumor ranges upward and downward. Utensils that are beneath the capital remain tahor. Rokanam and Yuri says they're tame. In a case where the tumor and the utensils are beneath the capital, if there's a space of a handbreadth, the utensils are tame, and if not, they remain tahor. Two wall closets are one beside the other, or one above the other. One of the closets is open and becomes tame, and so does the house, while the other closet remains tahor. If the door is closed, the wall closets are treated as if there is no empty space in between them at all, and they're ruled half and half to make the house tame.
And
Adios. Solid base. But in the case of an animal that was born on Yom Tov, all agreed is permitted. And in the case of a chick that was hatched from an egg on Yom Tov, all agree that it is prohibited. If one slaughters a wild animal or fowl on Yom Tov, Beit Shammai says he may dig up some earth with a spade and cover the blood. Beit Hillel says he may not slaughter unless it is earth prepared from before Yom Tov. But Beit Hillel agreed that if he had already slaughtered, he should dig up some dirt with that spade and cover the blood with it to the ashes of a stove are prepared. Beit Shammai says produce declared ownerless for the poor become ownerless, but Beit Hillel says it is not ownerless unless it is declared ownerless with respect to the rich as well as the case with Shemitah. If all the sheaves in the field are the size of one cob and one is the size of four cobs, he forgot the large sheaf. Beit Shammai says he's not treated as skach, no, it's shichacha, but Beit Hillel says it is shchichacha. If a sheaf is close to a wall, to a stack of grain, to a paddle or implements, and he forgot it, Beit Shammai says it is not treated as shikacha, but Beit Hillel says it is shikacha.
yep,
The fourth,
that's it. Done.
all right.
Okay.